From the News Channel 5 Network, this is Morning Line with Nick Beres.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us on Morning Line. Nick Beres here with you on a Tuesday. Interesting show on tap this morning. It's interesting as I think about going back to 2007 when, we had a situation here where smoking was banned from restaurants in general. You may recall when that happened if you still lived here. I remember doing stories on it. But there was one exception when it came to that. I think maybe there were others, but the one that comes to mind is that establishments that would be like bars or the like that set a age limit of 21 and above could continue to have cigarette smoking there. Well, now, as you may have heard, there is a smoking ban in the works here in Metro because a state law has been changed. The governor signed it, which will now allow individual municipalities decide one way or the other if they want to ban smoking across the board. And we're going to talk about that this morning with our guests. And I want to hear from you as well. I don't know how many of you frequent some of these bars, how you feel about the right to go into a bar and have a cigarette and a beer, if that's what you want to do. But it seems like the days of smoky bars in Nashville, Music City, and that's a biggie, okay? I mean, think of all the bars and restaurants we have in this city, may be limited now. There may be a change coming. To talk with us this morning about it, Jeff Syracuse, he is a Metro Council person. Good morning to you, sir.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Good to have you on. And Jamie Kent is an advocate for this, a musician, and I want to start with him.
Absolutely.
Because as a musician, and I've always thought about this, and I don't go as often anymore, but the bands up and coming musicians like yourself, smoky bars and jamming up there in the corner booth, or in the corner stage while everyone's listening, drinking and smoking. Isn't that kind of the culture of it?
I think that might have been the culture 50 years ago.
Yeah.
But the rest of the country has sort of caught up to this point and realized that it's not good for health. It's not good for business. As a independent road dog artist who spent the better part of a decade playing 200 shows a year, I can tell you that it's kind of a nightmare playing in a smoke-filled bar. I battle asthma personally, and so my voice essentially gets cut in half, and I'll lose my voice halfway through a show. I've had to cancel dates following up on it because my voice is just torched the next day.
Yeah.
Even down to things like your merch. Your T-shirts now all smell like
everything when you walk out of there.
Right, and your instruments smell like it for weeks afterwards.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, musicians like us, we double as working behind the bar or in the bar when we're not on the road too. Okay. So oftentimes we are the hospitality workers and the musicians, and we're hustling just to get by. And this is really a working class artist problem. As you get into bigger venues, they've all realized that it's best for business and best for musicians and the staff. So a lot of times we're having to battle this on our way up, and that's why it's become such a passionate thing for me to talk about.
I totally understand, especially an artist like you who has asthma. It's hard for me to imagine. Sometimes you walk into these clubs and bars and it's so thick, it's like fog in there. And so when I bring that up, all right, Jeff, it makes me realize, okay, I understand his point, but it seems that people like to smoke in these establishments. They enjoy doing this, to watch this. Is this going to, if something like this passes, second reading tonight, right? Something
Correct.
You support.
Right.
I mean, is that the culture? Did people go there to smoke and drink and watch? I mean, if you take smoking out of the equation, is that going to hurt business?
Actually, the data is pretty crystal clear about how much of a pro-business piece of legislation
Really?
that this is.
Okay.
I could point to some specific examples of bars who have voluntarily gone non-smoking and the revenues have gone up. So it may take, it's going to change, of course, and it may take just a little bit of creative marketing, but at the end of the day, these places where this proposed legislation affects, it can actually benefit them.
I wonder, have you looked back, because in comparing 2007, we talked about when it was made illegal for smoking in restaurants. What did it do to their business?
Right. It
did. Okay,
yes.
So the same thing. So what do you think's going on there? Do you think it's that All right, sure, there's going to be some folks that are upset that they can't smoke anymore. Maybe they stopped going, but you think there's many more folks that just didn't go because of the smoking and started? What's happening?
Sure, absolutely. Like Jamie said, this is an evolution of culture in a way, right? Where we have a select limited number of age-restricted places now that do allow smoking, but that population is getting smaller and smaller, and so this is supportive of those businesses. Ultimately, like I said, with just a little bit of creative marketing, but at the end of the day, especially in this city, in Music City, where we have a hospitality-centered economy and musician, we have a duty to protect our musicians and hospitality workers.
Okay, that makes sense to me. All right, so can you explain what is it that's on second reading tonight? So
Sure.
what specifically, what does it do?
So the bill will get rid of smoking in age-restricted venues, and so I do have a couple of amendments because I have taken some calls from bars or whatnot. So I'm going to push the effective date of this legislation to March 1 of 2023. That will give these places some time to make some decisions on the physical nature of their business. Can they build a little overhang so that somebody sitting at the bar can take a break, go outside, have a cigarette under a little protection from the elements, and come back inside? So that gives them some time to make some changes. The other one is a bit of an amendment for the hookah bars, right? Those are more cultural
Interesting. I was going to ask about
places. So this wasn't necessarily intended for them. So there's going to be a potential carve out for them. So I have been listening absolutely to folks and taking some calls or whatnot. So I think at the end of the day, this is a pretty pragmatic piece of legislation that, like I said, is not just pro-business, but protects the lifeblood of the city.
Yeah, so what do you think? I mean, how do you think the patrons will respond to this? You've performed in a lot of smoke-filled venues. So people, they're smoking for whatever reason. And by the way, they're not always smoking just cigarettes, if you know what I mean.
Right.
Okay, but that other stuff's illegal too, I guess, in Tennessee. But how do you think the patrons will respond to this?
I think ultimately, if you look at our peer cities across the country, other music cities that have all gone smoke-free.
Is that right? And so I guess we should go there. And you probably traveled to some of them. There are a lot of other cities that have across-the-board bans on, including 21 and above.
Yeah, Austin, Atlanta, New Orleans, Louisville, Charlotte. Basically, all our peer music cities have all gone this way. We're one of the last remaining ones. And I think the thing that I've noticed is that people go to these bars and establishments for the culture of the bar and establishment, for the people that work there, for the music that's playing, for the camaraderie, the darts, the pool. They don't go there because of the smoking, and it's really easy to just step outside and come back in. And you look at these amazing dive bar venues across the country, and they're all still thriving. They're all still great. They all still have that charm. And then people just step outside and smoke, and they come back in and enjoy the music and the fun in any other way.
And really, what he said a moment ago about just protecting, look, it's Music City, and we want to do everything we can to help you perform at your best. So what will this mean for you? I mean, obviously you've performed in some venues where there's been clean air.
Yep.
How big a difference is that?
I think that the big difference is that it's now it's no longer a mystery of, am I going to show up and is there going to be smoking in here? And I won't know, because right now you just never know.
Okay, so you don't always know what venue,
you don't always know. No, that's.
But if you're doing Nashville, are you assuming it probably is?
Yeah, that's the hope, right? And I think this just kind of takes all the mystery out of it, and it makes it so folks don't have to choose between their health and a paycheck. We have a bunch of musicians in our coalition, and I continue to hear stories of people like, oh, there's not that many left, but everyone has a story of, I showed up to play a writer's round, and I was super shocked to have it be filled with smoke. And so it's more than people think. Even though the number is dwindling, it still exists. It's still a problem, and it still affects us in ways that I think it's people don't want to hear, but it's the reality.
Are there some musicians though that smoke that for whatever reason maybe they feel that somehow lends to their performance? And I guess, is that an issue? Have you heard from any of them that say, well, gee, I'd like to have a cigarette here on the side and I'll puff on it between takes?
I haven't heard that specifically. We have artists in our coalition that smoke. And what I've heard time and time again is that even if I smoke, I don't like to be in a smoke-filled bar.
Yeah.
Because it's a different experience, and we're not telling anybody not to smoke. This isn't, a PSA on that. It's just asking them not to do it indoors where people work.
Yeah. it makes sense to me. You think of all these businesses, including News Channel 5 here. You know, it's a smoke-free building. It has been, as far as I can remember, here for myself. But they do set up areas, I guess, if someone wants to have a cigarette. I mean, we have outside picnic tables or whatever. And that was interesting to me. I'm trying to think of some of these bars and where they are in different areas. I don't know how easy that always is, but that's a good idea, to give them the time to set up a shelter somehow, to allow people to step outside and smoke.
I think that was fair.
I think absolutely.
And it's going to take some time for the health department to get up and running on all this as well. I mean, when this passes soon, it's not going to be an immediate enforcement where the health department's going to go out and start finding people anyway. That's not going to happen. So this is going to be an implementation process, and so this delay of implementation gives the places a time to figure out how they can best accommodate their clients.
We'll take a break on that note. Several other points I want to touch bases on, including some of the talks you've had with some of the bar owners.
Sure.
That gave you some insight and where we're going on this. And we can take phone calls if you have a question or comment. I know there's some cigarette smokers out there that are going to feel, again, they're being persecuted one way or the other. And we can talk about how you view that and trying to accommodate everyone, because you want the biggest crowds you can possibly have, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, the number 737-7587, talking about what appears to be the path right now toward smoke-free everything.
Amen.
In Nashville. All right, we'll be right back after this. Stay with us.